10 years ago, US Soccer, which is really the governing body acknowledged by FIFA, decided we had to go year of birth 10 years ago. All right, and a couple other changes went into effect as well. We had the 7-a-side, the 9v9 and 11-a-side build-up. That was all part of those initiatives as well. But the major one was indeed the change to year of birth. With the rationale 10 years ago, that helps us as we select players for our national teams. So as you can imagine, the focus was on the 0.0001% of the soccer playing population, if you will. A lot of youth entities involved, whether it's AYOS, US Club Soccer, US Youth Soccer, and I can go on and on and on. They all fought to go back to what it was because they realized and recognized the impact of these age group changes on the number of participants in youth soccer. All right, the number of youth soccer players in general has dropped off, specifically, or I would say more so even on the girls' side than on the boys' side. And them recognizing that, they said, or they basically went back to US Soccer and said, we need to change it, we need to go back to what it was. And that is basically what we're going to talk about today. All right, we have to redo or fix what went wrong about 10 years ago. That's their take on that. What do you remember of the age group changes? And did it impact you at all? Or was it somewhat smooth? You went through it fine, and so... But your take, please.
So 2016 happened to be the year I started playing for UCFC, so I came from a different team, different program, different players. I came over and I didn't notice really any difference at all. I don't think my parents told me. Turns out that was the right thing to do. It was all new faces, and it was, I think, maybe one player from Cranford on the team at the time, aside from me, if I remember correctly. So it was one familiar face. Other than that, I didn't know these kids anyway. Didn't really know how old they were. Obviously, we were all going to the same birth year. We were all the same age. But previously on my other team, we weren't. It was grade year. So I didn't notice the difference. I was never the biggest kid either. The same skill set that I had, which was speed, aggressiveness, still worked out in my favor, despite the changes, the new players I was coming in contact with. Ultimately, didn't make much difference for me, and it's opinion, but my parents not telling me, it worked out. It worked out really well for me, myself.
James, and by the way, James and I were just chatting beforehand because as we went through the age group changes, I got involved with some teams close to his age group, so I got an opportunity to work with him at times as well, or sometimes when my team needed players, he came up because he was, I believe you were the captain for the 03s for a significant number of years, right?
That is true, yes. So I was actually in 8th grade in the fall of 2016. So, my team would have been like one of the most impacted by that age group change at the time. I believe before 2016, the cutoff date was September 1st.
Something along those lines.
And I have a late August birthday. My birthday is August 28th. So I was always the youngest player on every soccer team I ever had. Only ever really played for Westfield Soccer and UCFC. So that was something that I was used to. And when that age group changed, our team essentially split in half. Half of our guys went to the older age group, which was coached by Ruben. And then we got an influx of players from the younger team, which was coached by Dan at the time, actually. That team was very successful, so shout out to you. And we got a lot of great players out of that. So our team, honestly, didn't really miss a beat. It was like super unfortunate because so many of my close friends who were in my grade at Westfield, in different schools in Westfield at the time, went to go to the team above us. But because there were so many, Ruben's team was actually lucky to hold on to a lot of players and able to have a fall season, which I know some other clubs were pretty unfortunate at the time. Couldn't have that luxury of fielding a team for their U15s of players that didn't have a high school season and had to rely on players who were, at the time, 2002 born, but were still in 8th grade. But for me, I honestly felt like, as a player, it was an advantage because I went from being always the youngest player on every team to being one of the more median-aged guys. I felt like it was around that time my development kicked up to a new level, too. I was already the captain of my team, but I felt like I even took more responsibility on from that as a result, and I felt like I became a better soccer player in the end from that. So that was, it was an interesting time. It was a little unfortunate that, some of my closest friends no longer were on my team, but that didn't mean that I never played with them again. There was pretty regular that I would go and guest as a player for the team a year above us, and we would train together regularly. So in that sense, it wasn't a big loss, and it was also around that time that we gained a number of players from some neighboring towns. We had a lot of good players from Cranford come in and Scotch Plains and really made our team very good, and we used the age group change as something of an advantage. So for me, it didn't affect me personally. I stayed with the same team, same coach, and I honestly think it helped me become a better soccer player in the end. But I do think that going back to this system, it's going to probably reduce some of the players who do get trapped between high school and 8th grade and not having a team for that fall season.
Awesome. And Brian, don't want to miss out on your feedback here as well.
10 years ago when the age group change happened, I was sort of in a transition period in terms of choosing clubs. I did try out for UCFC, did not end up playing for UCFC. I ended up going to play for STA. Did not love it, so I think I would have had a better time playing for UCFC.
By the way, we're not paying him to tell him that, just so you know. It's just a sweatshirt. That was all I promised him.
But honestly, when it first happened, I, kind of like Riley, I didn't really notice that anything had happened. So I think that speaks for itself. I think after playing for STA for 1 or 2 years, as a 2001 player, I kind of realized that, I started to realize that I was playing with kids that were a year below me because I had a very late birthday for my grade. And to be totally honest, I did not love playing with kids who were not in my grade. For a lot of reasons. I mean, kids relate to each other mostly through shared experiences, and the most shared experiences you're going to get is from other kids in your grade. So I felt like I didn't have a lot of shared experiences with the kids on my team. I felt like I didn't relate to a lot of the kids on my team. And even though I was one of the older kids on the team, I still felt like our team culture wasn't really there. I felt like I didn't make friends with a lot of the other kids, and like they were nice enough kids, it's just I couldn't relate to them that well. I also was in high school at this point and was looking to go get recruited to go play at college, and kids who were the grade below me weren't looking to get recruited at the same time that I was, so I felt like they weren't taking the team as serious as I was, which obviously wasn't their fault. They were a grade below me. But that kind of sums up how I felt about playing with kids who weren't in my grade. I didn't love it. I still love soccer. Like, it didn't ruin soccer for me in any way, but I wasn't a fan of it. I personally am a fan of this change, going back to grade-based, because I think that's where kids are going to relate better to the other players on the team. Yeah, that's all I have.
There we go. Thank you all for your input. So again, like, I can tell you how we experienced it. As you found out, I was involved as a coach at the time already. Dan was already involved as a coach at the time. We made it through the changes fine, but we can tell you how we experienced it as a coach. But getting the perspective from people that went through it as players, as participants in the program, I think is very worthwhile. So all three of them, one way or the other, kind of hinted towards some of the changes that were made and how that impacted them. The changes were made, and I said this before, all the way at the top with US Soccer. They felt like they had to make a change to make sure they remained competitive or stayed competitive or became more competitive, however you want to phrase it, with the rest of the world. Because there were a lot of countries around the world, they do it by year of birth. I remember being a player back in the day when I was in the Netherlands, growing up, where they also went from grade to year of birth, changed some things. Don't remember a whole lot about it, but that was the rationale. But it was focused on the top, and it was kind of a misjudgment on their end, hindsight, right, like 10 years later, because they were focused on the, as I said, 0.0001%. Now, one could argue that the top hasn't gotten better because the bottom, the foundation, where, let's face it, we're talking about grassroots soccer, participation, a huge amount of participation is needed for the top to get better. And the bottom has gotten more narrow, which obviously then impacts the top. And this is why a lot of youth soccer entities forced, or basically went back to US Soccer, said we got to do something about this, and this is why we're going back to. Another major issue that we faced, and we were just talking about this, no more trapped players. And what that means, some of you may have children born later in the year. If we continue as things stand, right, the current challenge that we have, and I'm looking at the current 2012s, because they would go through it next year. All right, so on the 2012 team, we would have players born January through July who, give and take, all of them are currently in 8th grade, and they will go into 9th grade by the fall of 2026. Makes sense, right? Everyone with me still? I don't want to lose you. But so those players, give and take, all will be in 9th grade in the fall. Then I also have a mixture of kids born August 1st through December 31st. Those are the kids currently in 7th grade who by the fall of 2026 will be in 8th grade. And that's what we mean by being trapped. There are peers right now born January through July, and I'm conveniently skipping over some kids that could potentially be born later in the year as well, but they're going into high school. They're going into 9th grade. So what do they do in the fall? They play high school soccer. So that means that all the kids born, or better said, just going into 8th grade next fall, are basically without a team. And we as an organization have figured out solutions to it. I mean, back in the day, the first year that we did it, I took on the U15 boys. Right? The main reason there was also to ease the minds of the parents, saying, hey, listen, this is important to us, we'll make it through. We also had to figure out how to deal with it. I was lucky at the time, because my U15 team had about 10 to 12 players born later in the year. If I did not have that, there have been instances where we only had 3 or 4 kids. What do you do with the 3 or 4 kids that are born later in the year?
Can I give you some insight on that?
Oh, sorry, you know what? Good point. We got a VP of UCFC who has gone through it with both, right?
Just one.
Just one?
So my older son is a senior this year, 2007 birth year. He was a trap kid. His birthday is in October. So in 8th grade, there was only 2 other trap kids on that team. So their entire team went to play freshman soccer. They did not have a fall season. Thankfully, we had the ability to train, but it was you had 3 kids who had to kind of put everything on hold while the rest of their team was getting into the high school experience. And kind of what Mr. Nigro was saying, like that's also that weird experience of you then have kids in different grades. But Trap did you twice. So he's now a senior playing U19, and that team, as a UCFC team, pretty much stuck together the entire time, which means we were down to having 2 kids left on that team who are seniors this year because everybody else graduated. So in order to give them a season, we had to rebuild another team and pretty much find trapped kids from everywhere and put it back together. So it's a tough experience for your kid to go through. And if your kid is going to play all the way through high school, the trap would have taken twice. So from a parent's perspective, the move is a good move because it's really tough to get a kid through trap season.
So we found ways to deal with it. And again, it all depended on how many players were, I went too fast. Depending on how many players are born later in the year. Sometimes we were lucky that it was half a roster. Sometimes it was only 2 out of 16, etc. We worked through it, but it's a challenge. And one of the challenges that if we move forward, will no longer exist. And this is one of the other reasons, or one of the main reasons, I would probably say, that we're going back to more grade-based. So the new setup, obviously we're moving forward into what has been, I would say, called grade-based. All right, and the reason it's between quotations is because it's not technically grade-based, but I'll talk you through all this. So the cutoff starting the fall of 2026 will be August 1st through July 31st the following year. All right, now again, it's not fully grade-based in New Jersey, but this is a universal change that's going to happen across the US. It's not just us, it's not just New Jersey. All major entities involved are making this change. The reason why August 1st is the cutoff, there are some states in the US where this August 1st is the school cutoff. So for them, it's grade-based. That's, I think, I could be wrong based on my limited knowledge of school systems across the US, that is the earliest cutoff. So that's why they have chosen August 1st. All right, so it's close to grade-based. It's not entirely for us, but this is where we're heading. Now, which basically means, going back to the example we had from players born in 2012, all right, so the first bit, the players born January through July, will play, if my clicker works, with the younger players that are currently U15 already, but they're 8th graders, as we just explained. So then we have a U15 team in a little bit, with players born August 1st, 2011, through July 31st, 2012. All right? And then obviously, the U14 age group will be players born August 1st, 2012 through July 31st, 2013. All right, and this is how it's, but you can move up or down depending on what age group you're looking at, but that's what it's going to look like, give and take. All right, based on, so we have a U15 team with kids going into 9th grade, and in the fall we have a U14 team with kids currently in 7th going into 8th grade. All right, so from that perspective, I do align with what Brian just said. It makes sense. And again, looking at it from a perspective of just full participation, all those kids now are given a chance to play a full fall season. All right, and by the time they get to U18, they again have their team with the players from their grade. All right? So this is a question that has come up a couple of times because, again, the school cutoff in New Jersey is October 1st, if I'm not mistaken. So we now find ourselves in a scenario, and I'll try to use this grid again. Hopefully, it's very simplistic, but hopefully it paints the picture that we're seeking. So, we have these age groups, all right? Now, we have kids that are potentially born in August or September, so after the cutoff, but who are, in this instance, going into 9th grade as well. So, again, it's not necessarily grade-based, but from our perspective, it makes more sense to continue to play with the players that you're graduating middle and high school with. So if you find yourself born August or September, but you're in the same grade as these players ahead of you, we recommend, and again, it's a recommendation, but we recommend you continue to play with those players. All right? Simply because then it's truly grade-based. All right? Now, we're not going to tell you that you have to do that. I know there's some parents that have been thinking about playing age appropriate based on the age cutoff. We don't have an issue with it, but hopefully you realize the implications of that in the long run as well. All right, so we recommend maybe you are on the younger end, but you're still playing with your peers from your grade versus playing with players a grade below. All right, now part of all this is as we go through team selection and all, we want to make sure that when people register for tryouts, including your son or daughter's grade in the registration is something that is super important. We have decent data already because we reached out to the membership before to discuss this, to bring you up to speed on this. But ideally, as I said, this is the plan for us moving forward. Now, a couple times the questions about playing up, playing down have come up. So first of all, playing up, technically if you are born August and September, by the letter of the new guidelines, you'll be playing up, but to us, you're just playing grade-based, and that's okay, first of all right? And we are willing to accommodate, all right? Now, the other thing we need to state with all this, so playing down, unfortunately, is not a possibility. I know that creates a challenge here and there, because I know of some people that have children born in July, but that were held back in school. Unfortunately, the setup as it stands doesn't allow us to push somebody down with the registration. All right, so even if you're born in July and you're grade below, you still have to play in the age group that the age group cutoff dictates. That's just something we have to work with, but every soccer organization in the country has to work with. And the reason that there is a cutoff, and it's not technically just grade-based, is because there are experiences in other sports where they do grade-based, where you have kids that could be born 2 years apart, but they could both be in 8th grade for whatever reason, and it also creates major discrepancies, as you can imagine, especially in age groups where children are fully developing and others are 2 years behind. So again, there's a time frame or there's a cutoff, and we have to adhere to it. If we find there is a child, all right, and I keep coming back to this, but you're born, like, I'm just using this again, but you're born anywhere October or beyond, the year below, but we believe said child would benefit from playing up, we will consider that, but we've always done that. However, one thing that I want to stress with all this, and hopefully you can see this, the implications of playing up are far greater than people sometimes realize, right? Especially if you do it consistently, both physically, emotionally, psychosocially. Now what you see here, this is a grid, and hopefully you can see it, but I'll talk you through this. I did another course at US Soccer over the fall season, which was specifically for people in my position with soccer clubs. And we talked a lot about the relative age effect, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, right? However you divide players or children, there will always be a relative age effect, unfortunately, because we often confuse early development with potential, if you will. Right? Somebody being a little faster, a little stronger, etc., is often confused with developing properly and being better or having more potential than somebody 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever number of months younger. But what I'm trying to highlight with this is, all right, from 8 to 9, all right, there's a 12-month gap. And if you're playing up as a 7-year-old with 8 or 9-year-olds, potentially, right, and I'm just using a huge example here, but you could be anywhere from 10 to 15% younger in terms of life experiences, physically, emotionally, psychosocially. So pushing players up should only be considered truly if, and again, this is not just a decision I make, by the way, I want to stress it as well. Like, honestly, I know a majority of the kids by name in the program, but this is a conversation we'll have with the staff involved. If we do believe someone would benefit from it, it's something we consider. But going back to some of the feedback you even got through some of the people that were sitting here, playing with your peers from your grade can be super beneficial. All right? If you're truly that good, then we'll consider it, but the majority of players probably will be best suited to play with the age group they're going into next year. We're already planning for the tryouts, of course. To help everyone get used to the changes with UCFC, we decided to already run age group sessions. We unfortunately only have done one so far, but the age group sessions are kind of just to get everyone introduced to one another. So there is already, players know one another a little bit at least, so we're not going into the tryouts cold, and certainly have to put everyone together. But we also have, as an organization, a good amount of knowledge on all our players to work out where they would give and take fall, given the development, the commitment, the dedication, the attitude, the effort, all that stuff. All right, because we do player evaluations, we do, our coaches track player attendance, but also player performance in every session, just so we kind of have a hunch of where players are and where they're heading and where potentially they're best suited moving forward. So it's not just that we're just going to do tryouts in the spring. We keep an eye on our players and their overall development throughout the year. So we have a base amount of knowledge that we can use to help us through the tryouts. The tryouts will be, especially for the middle school ages, probably mid-March already, potentially late March, because we also have to account for spring break and then multiple towns having different spring breaks to make sure that it's all taken care of. What were the dates that we were looking at then? Remind me, please.
The week of March 16th and 23rd.
There we go.
So,
but again, we have a lot of other sources and lots of other information we're going to use to help us form the teams. I stated this at the beginning, and this has always been the case. All right, like I have no horse in the race. So from my perspective, and for the coaches, it's the same. We just want to make sure that we put players where they're best suited, given their development and the developmental needs. Right? And that's obviously something we work out with the staff, but we're going to do our best. We have done this before, as I said, and we'll do it again. We know what we have to do, and we'll make sure that we get through this. Again, I would love to tell you it's going to be a smooth ride, but I'm sure there are going to be some bumps along the way. But frankly, when it comes to these changes, and it's funny how some of these gentlemen here refer to it, it's also the value that we as parents give to a change. It's often the adults that have a harder time adjusting to a change than the children themselves, especially if we as a parent are worried about our child. Listen, my kids are going to be on the younger end. It might not be easy for them, but from my perspective, it's their experience. I'll be there to support them. I love them no matter what, whether they're on an A team or a B team or a C team for that matter. I'll be there to support them on the sideline anyway. All right? I haven't told them too much about it because I feel like if I fill their heads with too much information, they're going to second guess themselves. I just want them to play. All right? The last story I want to give you on that, and by the way, I don't want to make it sound like I have figured it all out when it comes to parenting. I'm as flawed as any human being. But last year, my younger son went to tryouts. The only thing was he didn't know he was going to tryouts. I just told him he was going to go play a couple scrimmages. So a week later, when we got an invite for him to join a team, his response was, "What team?" I'm like, "Don't you remember you went to tryouts last week?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Never mind, I didn't tell you, but do you want to play on the team next year?" He's like, "Sure." Again, he's a little younger, but again, it's all how we manage expectations. And this is why we're also in front of you guys, to give you some clarity on all this, hoping that it eases your mind a little bit, because I can understand it's challenging, it could be stressful, but again, it's also the value that we give it. We'll work through it. Before we wrap up, all right, so hopefully you can see this. This is the grid as we have posted on the website with the cutoff and the age groups that we'll have next year. But again, the only caveat is there, if you're born after July 31st, but before October 1st, and you're in the grade ahead, make sure to let us know so we can plan accordingly as well. That's super important to make sure we can accommodate you and your child so they can play grade-based.